Now, discussing this story, we'll also get to discuss one of the last plots of land that is unclaimed by any nation.
2, 1.
Choose your poison, I got the potion, the remedy. Make you feel good like some Hennessy. I can show you what you've been missing. I replied, man, you must be kidding. Evil thoughts trying to play me like a dummy. You got the right one, you about to meet your demise.
And then in that same interview, calling Obama terrorist and every president before and after him a terrorist.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Third Eye Thursday. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a good show for you today, so let's get into some news. So we're gonna start off with our featured story here. So in our last video, we used a clip by Caspian Report. So that clip, it had an inaccurate map of Sudan. So that's why we're talking about it today. Now this map is disputed by Sudan, the USA, and the UN. So it's very important for us to discuss it. Now discussing this story, we'll also get to discuss one of the last plots of land that is unclaimed by any nation. For us to fully understand the conflict here, we have to get into the history.
As common to conflicts and territorial disputes, our story begins with the British. Egypt and Sudan are both British colonies as early as 1882 and 1890, respectively. In 1899, during the Anglo-Egyptian Condominium, the British has taken the responsibility of drawing the border between the colonies. They can't think of any significant basis for the border, so they've just drew a straight line running across the 22nd parallel north, ignoring any ethnic group or tribal boundaries. They call this the political boundary. However, in 1902, the British realized the wrong thing about the border that they've just drawn 3 years ago, so they have to fix it and drew another one. They call this new border the administrative boundary. But have they really fixed it? No. The two border cause dispute. When you combine both border, it creates this. A land that everybody wants, called the Halaib Triangle, and a land that nobody wants, called Bir Tawil.
So yeah, as you can see, this conflict pretty much started by British colonizers promising a piece of land to two different nations. Now I wonder where we've seen that before. Now, as we begin to unravel one of the numerous border disputes left over from the past colonial model of Western society, we have to understand how things played out from there from the start. So naturally, both Egypt and Sudan claimed the border that is more beneficial for them. And to just simplify history a whole bunch, they pretty much have been going back and forth about the border. But this is not just a simple innocent issue about lines on a piece of paper. We've all seen how border disputes can really destroy people's lives.
Muhammad Ahmed has always identified himself as a Sudanese from the Bushiri tribe, which comes from the border area. But that makes it difficult to get goods and resources to reach the little town of Osaif where he lives. That's because Osaif, in northeastern Sudan, is the closest town to the disputed border between Sudan and Egypt in the triangle known as Halaib, which Egypt continues to hold.
Some people say that the Busharis are now part of Egypt, but in our hearts we are not Egyptians. None of us say we are Egyptians, and even Egyptians don't accept us as part of them.
Muhammad says he has to obtain permits from Egyptian authorities to cross into Halaib, as do many people who live in Osaif but have families in the triangle. The dispute over Halaib, a region rich in oil and minerals, started when Sudan gained independence in 1956 and borders were drawn up. Over the past few years, the dispute has escalated, with Sudan accusing Egypt of harassing its citizens when they cross into the region and executing dozens of them in the past 12 months alone. That fence marks the beginning of the disputed area of the Halaib Triangle. Egypt has stationed forces there for more than 2 decades, despite protests from the Sudanese government. Recently, Halaib has been at the forefront of increased tensions between the two countries. Tensions exacerbated by Sudan's support for Ethiopia's plans to build a hydroelectric dam, which will reduce the amount of water reaching Egypt. Sudan has repeatedly complained to the UN Security Council over Halaib and wants the dispute solved through arbitration. Egypt has failed to respond.
So that's been the issue. Now, from a human standpoint, I think the region should be able to stay undivided from their Sudanese relatives. But because of political instability in Sudan, that left the country weak and unable to defend its lands. So yeah, that is the issue of Bir Tawil and the Halaib Triangle and this last unclaimed piece of land and the border dispute. Alright, so now we're gonna dive deep about the recent story about the Wagner group that was in the news. So in an unexpected series of events, the Wagner group, first their leader Prigozhin complained that the Russian military attacked his troops, and then they went on to march almost all the way into Moscow, and they stopped right before. Prigozhin claimed this because he didn't want to shed innocent Russian blood due to this conflict. And then Russia, being in a tough position, pretty much had to agree to pardon all the Wagner troops as well as Prigozhin. Now Prigozhin went to Belarus, but now he just came back to Russia, so we'll see how things play out for him. But knowing that Wagner is a big part of the Russian force, it does seem like maybe the Russian force is unraveling a little bit, and hopefully that will at least mean a little bit of peace for the Ukrainian people as soon as possible. This story pretty much shows you the power of private militaries. It's very interesting to me, the similarities between Prigozhin here as well as Hemeti in the Sudan conflict. They pretty much mirror each other. Now listen to these similarities. First off, both of these army generals made billions off of people's money, and they are both backed by the dictator that has an iron grip over their country, and the dictator allowed them to raise an army to anonymously meddle in wars in other countries. And both of these war generals turned on the dictator. So the similarities to me are just so stark, and like I said, it just really shows you the power of these private militaries that is growing in the world. Is something that we really have to pay attention to and see how they play a part in shaping history.
Look at you spinning your loot. Feel like I'm ready to rob. I hope you're ready to shoot. I hope that I don't survive, cause if it's just a flesh wound, it could be worse than Tupac. Shoot to kill or I prove it.
Our last story today here, we're gonna be talking about the escalating situation in Camp Jenin. There was recently one of the largest military operations in Palestine that was carried out by the Israeli army.